Welcome to the deep dive. We take the sources, you get the key insights fast, maybe a bit surprising, and hopefully engaging enough to stick with us.
Absolutely. Shortcut to getting informed.
So today, we're diving into some specific bits from a study, a commentary actually, on Ecclesiastes chapter 9.
Okay.
And it focuses on this section with a pretty stark title, For Tomorrow You Die.
Wow. Yeah. That certainly cuts right to the chase, doesn't it?
It does. So our mission really is to unpack what this commentary says about living life purely under the sun, without any hope for eternity as they interpret it.
Right. Focusing on that specific interpretation presented in the source.
And the commentary kicks off with a bold statement. It claims a man with no hope is the most dangerous kind of man. That's kind of the central theme we'll trace.
That's a heavy starting point. Sets a definite tone for understanding the text through their lens.
Definitely. So where should we start?
Well, let's dig in. The commentary begins with Ecclesiastes 9, verse 1. And it points out this deep uncertainty. Even if you're wise, even if you try hard, you just can't know if your actions will lead to love or hatred from others.
Everything's sort of up in the air, like all options are open, as the source puts it.
Exactly. And what's interesting is how the commentary connects this right back to the previous chapter, chapter 8.
How so?
It suggests Solomon is hitting the limits of human wisdom here, especially when trying to figure out what happens after death, without God in the picture.
So that inability to know the ultimate future is key to this under the sun viewpoint.
Absolutely central, according to this commentary. It frames everything that follows.
And that uncertainty, that lack of control, it seems to lead right into verses 2 and 3, which honestly sound pretty bleak.
They do. The text says the exact same fate hits everyone.
Everyone, like righteous, wicked.
Yep. Good, clean, unclean, people who sacrifice, people who don't. Good people, sinners. It doesn't seem to matter. It looks totally universal and, well, random.
Indiscriminate.
That's the word. And this is where the commentary makes a really strong interpretive move. It argues this sameness of fate just under the sun is actually presented as an evil.
An evil. Why?
Because the commentary suggests, believing this, that everyone just ends up the same, can lead your mind to be full of evil and folly.
How does that work?
Well, the logic presented is, if this life right here is truly all there is, if you just die and, quote, decay away,
then what?
Then there are no ultimate consequences, no final judgment or reward for how you lived.
Okay. So if death is just the end, full stop, the motivation for living a certain way, maybe a moral way, seems less important.
From that perspective, yes. The incentive structure changes completely, and the source commentary is really direct about this.
It doesn't hold back.
Not at all. It explicitly calls the belief that this world is all that there is, that we just die and decay away, a, quote, lie from Satan.
Wow. Strong language.
Very strong. And the commentary claims Satan's goal with this supposed lie is to lead people towards the judgment of hell. That's the ultimate consequence laid out in this source for adopting that purely under-the-sun view.
Okay, so that's a very serious framing. Starting from that point, uncertainty, random fate, no consequences. The text then seems to shift focus in verses 4 to 6. It talks about clinging to life itself.
Right. Being linked with the living means there's still hope. It uses that really vivid image.
Better to be a living dog than a dead lion. Yeah, that's memorable.
It is. And it contrasts this with the dead who know nothing, get no longer any reward, and are basically forgotten.
Their feelings, loves, hates, envies, just gone. No more share in anything happening under the sun.
But here's where the commentary adds another layer of interpretation. It says the hope mentioned here isn't like real hope, not hope in Christ.
So what is it then?
It's described as a false hope, one the commentary attributes to the devil. The source sees this passage as describing people living apart from God who desperately hold on to their earthly life at all costs.
Because it's literally all they think they have.
Exactly. Life itself, just existing, becomes the ultimate value.
And that seems to flow right into the next bit, verses 7 to 10, which almost sounds like advice to just, live it up.
It does have that feel, doesn't it? Eat your bread with joy. Drink your wine with a happy heart.
Wear nice clothes. Use perfume. Enjoy life with your spouse.
Yeah.
Even calls it your meaningless life or days of futility.
Right. And then it says, whatever you do, do it with all your strength. Kind of a Carpe Diem vibe.
So how does the commentary handle that? It seems almost contradictory.
Well, the commentary interprets this as the logical reaction if you truly believe this world is all there is, especially for those who can afford it, like the rich Solomon often talks about. If you think this world is all that there is, then from that viewpoint, it makes perfect sense to work like crazy to get the most out of it while you can.
Squeeze out every drop of pleasure or success.
Precisely. The source suggests this leads people to spend their lives chasing accumulation, chasing what the world defines as success. But it firmly places this drive within the context of a life that sees no hope or meaning beyond the grave.
It does make you pause, doesn't it? This idea of living for the moment because the future, the afterlife, feels so uncertain or maybe just not there. Do you see echoes of that today?
You could argue it resonates with certain modern attitudes, for sure. The commentary provides a specific diagnosis. Focusing solely on the temporary leads logically, perhaps, to maximizing this life because there's no perceived value or consequence beyond it.
Okay, moving on. Verse 11 brings us back to that theme of randomness overriding effort.
Yeah, this was pretty direct. Races aren't won by the swift.
Or battles by the strong. Food doesn't go to the wise or wealth to the intelligent. It's not about merit.
Apparently not always. Instead, it says, time and chance rule them all. Your best efforts might not be enough. It's unpredictable.
How does the source interpret that?
The commentary connects this directly to people putting their hope in luck or chance.
Like gambling.
Exactly. It even uses modern examples like lotteries or gambling. And it notes that while maybe you get a temporary win...
It doesn't last.
Right. The commentary suggests those winnings are often just spent foolishly, so the gain is fleeting. It's not a solid foundation.
And then verse 12 really hammers home how unpredictable the end is.
Oh, yeah. People don't know when their time will come.
Like fish caught in a net or birds in a snare, just suddenly, bam, it happens at an unfortunate time.
It paints life as really precarious, and the commentary links this feeling back to the idea of life being like a giant game of chance.
If you think that, how does it affect how you live?
Well, it can reinforce that idea of living like today's your last day. Just go for broke now.
But the commentary contrasts that, doesn't it?
It does, starkly. It contrasts living that way with living in service to Christ, as if expecting his return today. So the commentary is clear. Solomon, in this passage, is describing people without Christ.
People living like there is no tomorrow and no eternity to answer for our actions.
That's the key phrase from the commentary. It's the perceived lack of future accountability that shapes the present actions in this view.
Then the chapter shifts again, giving us this sort of mini-story, a parable in verses 13 to 16.
Right, the little town under siege.
Attacked by a great king, but saved by a poor, wise man.
Using his wisdom, not strength, he saves the whole city. But then...
Nobody remembers him. Nobody remembered that poor man. His wisdom is ultimately despised, ignored.
It's a poignant story, and the commentary sees it as a direct comparison between wisdom and brute strength. It also suggests it could represent God's people, maybe the faithful remnant, and particularly the role of a prophet. Well, the commentary points out that prophets, bringing God's message, were often ignored, right, or even downright despised, especially when the message was challenging. And it also notes how God often used humble, poor men to deliver incredibly powerful world-saving messages, which were still frequently rejected by those in power.
That ties into the final verses the commentary highlights, 17 and 18.
Exactly. A wise man speaking quietly is more worth heeding than the shouts of a ruler commanding fools.
And wisdom is better than weapons of war, but a person who makes a mistake can destroy much good.
The commentary observes here that often fools are the loudest and proudest. They might use volume or just lots of words to kind of make up for a lack of real wisdom.
Noise over substance.
Yeah. Whereas a wise person tends to build things up, contribute positively. But a fool, or a sinner as the text puts it, can tear down so much good, sometimes just with one mistake.
Does that ring true for you, this idea that quiet wisdom often gets drowned out by loud folly, but it's actually more valuable?
I think we see that dynamic a lot, don't we? In meetings and public discourse.
Yeah, definitely. You can probably think of times where maybe good advice was ignored because it wasn't shouted, or it came from someone without status, and things went sideways as a result.
It's a recurring theme, unfortunately. The value of the message versus the volume or status of the messenger.
So let's try to wrap this up. We've gone through the commentary's take on Ecclesiastes 9.
We have. It paints a consistent picture of life lived under the sun, meaning without that eternal perspective.
What are the key takeaways from the source's analysis?
Well, there's the pervasive uncertainty, about outcomes, then the appearance of this random fate hitting everyone equally.
Which leads to that intense focus on just enjoying this life, getting the most out of it now, because it's seen as all there is.
Right. And alongside that, maybe putting hope in luck or chance, because effort doesn't always guarantee results.
And finally, the tragic observation that true wisdom, especially if it comes from a humble source, often gets ignored or despised.
Those are the main threads the commentary pulls out.
And the commentary's overall judgment on this entire under-the-sun perspective.
It frames it pretty clearly as dangerous, potentially leading to folly, even evil.
Why dangerous?
Because, in this interpretation, that worldview strips away any sense of ultimate consequence or accountability beyond death. If there's nothing after, then what really stops you?
It's a specific, theologically driven analysis of that perspective.
Very much so. It examines the challenges and the likely human responses when life is viewed only through that temporary earthly lens.
Okay, so to leave you, our listener, with something to think about, drawing directly from this source's perspective,
Yeah.
if you accept its premise that this under-the-sun view sees life as just chance, just temporary, with no eternal hope,
Okay.
then the question the source implicitly raises is, within that specific framework, what could possibly give anything real, lasting meaning or value?
That's definitely something to chew on.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.